CMPRadio.net, man. You already know it's your boy, Uncle P, and this is another episode of the Cultivating Mature Positivity podcast. And today we have a very, very special guest, my man, Ethan Poetic, out in Lancaster. Brother, he has a story to tell, right? That talks about adversity and resiliency, right? So, we want to get him up here as soon as possible. What's going on, Ethan? How you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling good. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a blessing to be on here.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So you had hit me up. We were talking a couple minutes ago about your story. So let's start at the beginning for the people who do not know who you are. Who is Ethan Poetic?
I am from coastal Pennsylvania, home of Rick Hamilton, my second cousin Hubie Marshall, Clarence Smith, and many other coastal student athletes, and of course the legendary Harry Lewis and many other people. I was a student athlete. I played football, track, and of course wrestling. I furthered my education. I inspire people around the world, and I'm also a self-published author. My book is called The Inspirational Story of Ethan A. Poetic, Chronicles of Adversities, Education, Sports, Relationships, and Resiliency. And my website is ethanspeaks.com, where people usually book me for keynote speakings. I'm also a certified mediator, certified restorative justice in circles, where I go to schools, form a circle. We have our talking piece, and it's time to have conversations about things that need to be addressed.
Yes,
Bullying,
yes.
poverty, mental health, you name it. That's what I specialize in.
Okay.
Because we have to start, how I say this politely, we have to start being a voice for our own stories and what's bothering us.
Right.
Because when we hold on to pain, scars, wounds, that stuff becomes excess baggage and it blocks us from our blessing.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, I talk about in my book, I have an estranged relationship with my dad. He graduated from an historically black college called Cheney University.
Yeah, the Wolves. Go ahead, Cheney. See you.
And he's also made a pledge to a certain fraternity. But I realized reflecting on the situation is I didn't have an estranged relationship with him and certain things that, were going on between him and my mom that weren't going in the right direction. I probably would have went to Cheney University as a second gen. But because, everything was able to turn itself around through this nonprofit organization called Atalo Prep, formerly known as Children's Ever Chance Foundation, I ended up forging my own way, where I became an alumni of Harrisburg Area Community College.
Okay.
And I was awarded last year Distinguished Alumni at the Giants Center. And I furthered my education even further at Millsville University, where I not only graduated with a bachelor's degree for speech communication, minor broadcasting, and media, I was also awarded the Overcoming Adversity Award, featured in the Snapper newspaper.
Okay.
Allowed to tell my story on the radio. I have a book signing day there. And the day I graduated college is the day to interview for television.
I want to talk about your story, this story of adversity, because I watched the clips that you sent me. It seems as though you were in a life-altering, a life-challenging situation. So explain that a little bit, right?
Long story short, I was helping out this nonprofit, again, called the Atalo Prep, formerly known as Children's Ever Chance Foundation. We, at the time, were selling Dewsbury watches to raise funding for the nonprofit. His name is Jordan Steffi and his wife, Keandra Bear. And we did very good with a large amount of people for both the morning shift and the afternoon shift. And as I left out there, I was supposed to go to Philly with my uncle, my aunt, and my two cousins. But unfortunately, I didn't make it there. I ended up in a near fatal car accident, death, near death in Paradise, Pennsylvania. My driver, I'll say our driver, hit an 18-wheeler head on.
Wow.
Traffic was backed up 3 miles each way.
Mm.
I don't remember the car accident per se. It's more of a situation where I did some soul searching of looking at that newspaper article, that television clip, and like being at the car accident scene for myself to look at. This is where everything took place, and I still drive past it. Then I actually look on my Facebook wall of all the people saying, "We're praying for you. We're hoping for the best and everything." And I was able to paint a picture, in a magnifying way of the car. The car was cut in half by the jaws of life by the fire department. The ambulance people put their fingers on my neck to see if I still had a pulse. They put a neck brace on me, took me out as slow as possible out of that car accident, put me on a stretcher. And when I noticed my aorta got torn, where I should have died within 3 to 5 minutes, they ended up poking holes in the side of my ribs to stop their internal bleeding. That's further delayed the situation. I didn't know about that until I watched CSI New Orleans, how they internal bleeding.
Right.
And the nearest hospital was Lancaster General, which was about 30 minutes away.
Wow.
And then I woke up 2 times. The first time was on cloud 9 after the emergency surgery. And the second time was more in a conscious state, where there was a woman at the door, and she was crying tears of joy, but I couldn't I saw it, but I couldn't feel it because I was my nerves were desensitized due to all the medication. And that's the day I was declared a walking living miracle and a long journey to come.
In this moment, what do you remember about that moment, right? It's a car accident, you're in the hospital, right? When you woke up, right? What was the first thing you remember?
When I wake up, in that more conscious state, I got IVs in both my veins.
Oh.
I got a left black eye. I lost over 80 pounds.
Wow.
I couldn't eat or drink. I had a concussion. They did an MRI of me sometime later, showing that there was blood still in my brain as it was still recovering.
Right.
Then I had another surgery where they had to put me on a feeding tube because my larynx had gotten paralyzed because the ambulance people put this tube down my throat so far, it caused that type of damage. And I remember like it was yesterday when I woke up from that second surgery, I was thirsty. I asked the doctor or nurse, can I get some water? She had a popsicle stick with a sponge on it, filled the cup up with water, dipped it in there twice, told me to open up. Boom, only one drop.
Right.
So
were you in a coma? Was this long after your accident? You said you lost 80 pounds.
Yeah, it's just that's from a lot of internal bleeding and just not being able to eat, not being able to drink. They're doing what it takes to save my life.
Absolutely.
And it didn't seem real, but it was actually real. My parents were there, family was there, waiting in the emergency room, visiting room. It's like they stopped what they were doing to look out for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't always like that for me growing up, where they stopped what they were doing, looking out for my best interests.
Right.
And it took something like a near-death experience for that to happen.
Yeah, sometimes that's what's necessary, right? You were saved, but your family was capable of being there for you. That goes to show you how much they loved you, how much they cared about you, right? I know it's hard when we think about life. We go through life and we feel like no one's there, no one's supportive. but people can be supportive as far as they see you, right? So they see you up and running around, they don't feel as though they need to be supportive of that, right? But when you're in a very dire situation that you were in, your family said, "Oh no, now we have to step up. We have to be here. We have to be accountable." So in moments where you felt isolated or misunderstood, what kept you grounded? Like, because you're doing a lot for the people in your community, right? What keeps you grounded? What kept you grounded?
A lot of things. When I finally did, was able to go back to college and work. As I said this several times before, parents and guardians want to know who's working with their kids. And I was working with student athletes in the after school program.
Right.
They would start their small talk conversations to get to know my name.
Right.
Then they go away, research. The next time they see me, they pull up their cell phones like, "Is this you from the near fatal car accident?"
Yeah.
I felt uncomfortable because I never was intending on talking about this situation.
And why not?
For me, I saw humility, vulnerability, and I just didn't understand what other people saw on the other side.
Do you
What
think it's
people
something
saw,
wrong with vulnerability? Think it's something wrong with being vulnerable?
there wasn't anything wrong. It's just for me, there's a lot more to it as I talk about my book, because it's like, people thought, my life was just much better from the car accident and all this other stuff. But there's more to it that I talk about in my book.
Right.
Where, unfortunately, my parents were making healthy decisions and it caused further delays. And, I'll say that for later down the road or this conversation. But what I didn't see, what other people saw, was that they saw inspiration, a comeback story.
Yes.
They saw that their prayers were answered. They saw that if this guy can overcome his near-death situation, maybe there's a few things I need to change in my life to get back on the right track. Absolutely. I didn't see that in the midst of what I was going through. It wasn't until sometime later where I did see it and the bridge became gapped. And that became like the light bulb went off in my mind for that situation. Then the other situation was when I got featured in the newspaper the first time, is more like a follow-up story by Lancaster newspaper, also known as LMP.
Right.
That was a good time. I got featured on the front page and everything. I was able to get the newspaper. I bought several copies, laminated. I thought I was going to need a police escort to work. When I got featured on this other newspaper on the front page called the Southeast Times, shout out to Tanae Darby and Marquise Lumpton, I thought it was just going to be a whole nother story about a comeback. It was part of that, but as I got reading towards the end of the newspaper article, two words standed out for me, which was survivor's remorse. That explained why I was going through the waves of emotions.
Right.
When my anniversary would come up. And I didn't understand it because that partly explained why I didn't feel comfortable talking about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I look back on it now, like, if I had known that sooner, I would address it sooner. But I also realize things come in due time.
Yes, they do. Absolutely.
And then I also remember during some situations where I didn't want to go to college. Go to college that day when the anniversary was coming up. But as I'm, laying in my room, I just remember that promise I made to my grandma for her to see me as her first grandson to graduate from college from the Giants Center from Hack.
Right.
And, unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it because she passed away 3 weeks before the graduation ceremony was set to begin. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she was still there in spirit, and I just kept going on with my life and was the pallbearer for that funeral, mourn, grieve with everybody, and kept moving forward.
So what are 3 habits or practices that helped you stay mentally and emotionally strong, during these difficult times, right? Your grandmother passing away, the accident, survivor's remorse, right? Everything that you felt. And what are those 3 habits?
There's a lot of things I could say. For example, I grew up in a single parent household of five. I didn't have, a very supportive background and upbringing because I was in learning support classes.
Right.
But as I reflect on everything now, I realize, both my grandmoms, one when she first saw me, held me in her arms, said I was born with greatness.
Mm-hmm.
While the other one I just talked about, she had faith that I was born with greatness.
Mm-hmm.
So they were speaking life into me before I even spoke my first words.
Right.
And I didn't understand that and was told that until years later. Then there's also having that support from the foundation, the nonprofit organization. And there's also a second chance of, redeeming what should have happened much sooner
Mm.
when it didn't happen that way. With me growing up in a single parent household of four, then turned five, it just became a situation where I was the second child for both my parents. The difference was they didn't have a serious relationship together. And my mom, was choosing certain men that she did not properly vent.
Mm.
And, having children with them, the more children you have, the more you give of yourself. But this is why I, have to give a reality check. There's nothing cute about being in poverty. There's
No.
nothing cute about, you know, being in learning support classes where you're considered disfranchised in a disadvantaged background. Because when you're in a learning support class, the school district can apply for federal and state funding because they want to treat this child like a golden goose because the teacher who specializes in learning support classes is going to get paid more compared to a teacher that's teaching medical classes. Therefore, the tuition for that student is going to be 3,000 to 5,000 during my time period. And then I also look at the situation where other people saw life's coming attraction in their prayers before I did.
Wow.
And everything I see and experience now, I didn't see back then.
Right.
But I also realize my anniversaries that I celebrate, I look at it as more of a celebration of life. I'm also looking at, the people who unfortunately are involved in mass incarceration,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's in county prison, state prison, federal penitentiary. Those people wish they were in my position.
Right.
They wish they had that college degree. They wish they had the comeback story.
Hmm.
Instead, their stories are more anytime a child or group of children come in from the it's like this Garrett Straight program they usually have, where they tell these teenagers and kids, you keep making these decisions, this is where you're going to end up at. So that's what the purpose of those who are incarcerated prevent other people from coming in to be like them, and they keep it 100.
Right.
And the fact that I inspire those who are on probation and parole, because my book is used in Lancaster County Courthouse as part of the requirements, where they not only have to read the book, write about it, but also talk about it with their parole or probation officer, so they build resiliency from within, so that
Mm.
when they do get out of the system, they don't get back into the system.
That's dope. I like that. I like that. I think when people, I'm one that has been locked up several times in my past, and I think after discovering who I was, because I went to therapy, right? I was that guy that you said your mom wasn't vetting properly, right? I have 8 children. I share them with 5 mothers, so I understood that. But when I went to therapy, I understood that I had a greater calling, right? I had to get my voice out there, and I had to create a platform that allowed other people like yourself to come and talk about what you're doing in our community. There are millions of people in our community that are doing this work, that are trying to help each other, right? We just don't know about it, right? So I thank you for reaching out to me and coming in for an interview. But resiliency is a big thing, right? When you figure out what you want to do, right? When you understand who you are, now you have an even bigger mission than you had before, right? So I definitely applaud you for that. Um, how did you turn your story from pain to purpose? Like what was that like, right? To turn your story.
Well, it goes back to this quote where it talks about I'll give you beauty for your ashes.
Mm.
Then I also look at my story in like comparison to like the homeless to Harvard story, where there was this girl who was homeless, but when she took her SAT scores and filled out application to Harvard, she got accepted to an Ivy League school that
Wow.
has one of the highest rejection rates and the lowest acceptance rates. Then I look at it from an athletic perspective of the movie called The Blind Side. That story is based on the Michael Orr story,
Right.
where he grew up in poverty down in Tennessee, but there was his family that believed in him and saw greatness in him, and they was able to get into a private school, helped him further his education there, where he became a starting offensive lineman and defensive lineman, where he was not only big in size, but he was an enforcer. And when he made his presence known, next thing you know, D1 offers start coming for him. He faced some adversities with his GPA, but he was able to get it corrected. And then when he graduated from college, he not only graduated with a bachelor's degree, he was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens and became a multimillionaire.
Right.
Then I also look at the other story of the pursuit of happiness. And this is where I do talk about in the book where there's a chapter based on me where I did experience homelessness, but there was beauty on the other side of it,
Absolutely.
where the guy still saw a brighter future ahead of him, even though his wife left him and he got his kid with him. And he was able to turn that story into a book, into a movie. Then there's also the movie Precious, which was originally a book. And, unfortunately, life does happen, life has its challenges, and I get to decide whether I want to be the victim or victor. And far too many times, people want to be the victim and portray that picture
Mm-hmm.
and live in it. But the thing is, you start victimizing other people and then want to excuse the behavior.
Mm.
And that's where the cycle gets repeated.
Repeat it over and over. Hurt people hurt people. Right? Hurt people hurt people. So I definitely agree with you there.
And then when I decide to be a victor, I'm breaking the cycle and breaking the chains. And people look at my life differently, in a different lens as well. But I also realized from a bigger perspective of if my mom and the men she was involved with, where she had kids with, would have turned things around, they instead would have been known for resiliency. They would have been known for a comeback story. They would have been known for bridging the gap and making life easier.
Right.
Even though I talk about my book, the truth, and my parents don't like it, but it's the reality of this is what I experience. This is what I witness.
My experience, right?
And this is what's documented
Mm-hmm.
by the school districts. They may talk nice, but they're writing documents, typing it up, printing it out, giving you a copy, and you're signing off on it. And the fact that, as I told my dad this to his face, you weren't there at one parent teacher conference or RIP meeting. So therefore, you create the stigma and give a school district more ammunition to say, hey, government, we still need this money. His dad's not present, not
Mm-hmm.
one time. They don't even have his emergency number.
Wow.
They don't have his cell phone number. They don't have his address listed. And I'm not speaking in a way of putting somebody down. I'm speaking in a way of the cycle was repeated because that's some of the things that his dad was doing. Because his parents were together, where divorce happened, and that's a lot of pain on a child to have his father living in the household to start a new life elsewhere, and then having other children, but having more access to them. So
It's hard. It's hard. You're definitely right.
So when I understand that backstory, it explains why that was happening to me. But moving forward, I'm not speaking about it in a way of putting people down, even though my grandfather has already passed. It's a matter of acknowledging the history of
Acknowledging
what
it.
I need to not do, what I need to do better,
Right.
and not repeat, or else I'm going to be looked at as Pond, the guy who repeated 3 generations of bad cycles.
Right. Right.
So moving forward, it's a matter of encouraging other people to break the cycle, because I didn't get here by making bad choices. I got here by stepping outside my comfort zone several times over,
That's
one layer at a time, like an onion.
right. Right. You can't sit inside your comfort zone. I know it feels comfortable. I know you feel like you're comfortable, but until you're uncomfortable, that's when growth happens. Growth doesn't happen by standing still. Growth doesn't happen by being where you're familiar or where you're comfortable. Growth happens from being uncomfortable. So I salute you, bro. I really do. Um, I got one more.
After all, diamonds are made from pressure.
Yes, 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 yes. What do you say to someone right now who feels stuck in their struggle, bro?
There's several ways I could look at it. I'll use myself and speak in general as well. You have to see that there's a problem,
Mm.
and you have to start at home in your heart and in your mind.
Mm.
You also have to do some evaluation of who you're really spending the most time with, because that's who you're likely to become.
Mm.
And you also have to look at what are your gifts besides being athletic.
Mm.
And I use myself for example. When I was in middle school and on the freshman football team, there was a few guys that played at the next level for college, and some graduated from there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to play varsity sports due to certain situations, but I had the comeback of saying, and this is where I make my coaches proud, that I graduated college not once but twice
Twice, right?
without an athletic or academic scholarship.
Mm.
So now they get to tell their wives and family members, this is what I was investing into when he was in middle school and freshman year. It's kind of like the sheep story where one leaves, but you still have a whole pack. I was that sheep that left, not because of the choices I made, but because the choices my mom was making.
Right.
Because she didn't want to hire a babysitter. Then she getting caught up in the law. Again, I'm not speaking in a place of disrespect. I'm speaking from a place of this is what I
This is
experienced.
what I went through. This is my story, right? And for people that don't understand that, for our parents, for the people that are not they aren't holding themselves accountable. When accountability is thrown on the table and I say this is what I went through, this is what I experienced, this is why I became the person that I became, you just have to accept it, right? And how are you helping yourself? Like there were people around you, obviously, from your grandmothers, right, to the women that were in your life, right, that saw greatness in you, that put that in you, so you had something to look at. You didn't know that you had to get up to go get it, right? And that's the problem that we have right now. It's not enough people getting up. There are enough people that see that we can change. There are enough people that know that we can do something different, but they're not getting up. And you got to get up. You got to move. You got to be active, right? You can't be the number one word in activism is active. You have to be active. You have to get up. You have to talk to people. And you're coming out. You're talking to schools. You're talking to football teams. You're talking to basketball teams. You're in a nonprofit situation, helping people see that they can get up. So I salute you, Ethan. I really do. I would like to talk to you more. So we're gonna continue this. I got to get to work though, but we're gonna continue this. We're gonna talk. I'm gonna hit you over the email, man, because I think you said you do a podcast.
Well, I usually get interviewed on people's podcasts.
Right. I think you should do a podcast. Right. I think you should do that, interviewing other people and talking to them about transformative thinking, right? How do we begin to change? How do we begin to acknowledge that change is possible, right? All of these things that you're talking about right now, right? You had to go through something where your life was almost taken from you for you to realize I can do something different. See, me, myself, I thought I would be dead by 37. So I didn't care what I did, right? And then I had my 37th birthday and said, I'm going to be here. Right. So I had to change, right? I didn't always understand that change meant moving, change meant changing where I am right now into something better, right? And I did that, right? The radio station, for the things that I do in my community, I'm doing that. But I want you to speak on changing and understanding the gift that you were given, right? Because you were given a gift, right? It just wasn't matured or taken care of properly while it was growing. But you have a gift, bro. And I'm telling you, and I salute you, man. Thank you. Thank you for this interview. We're gonna do a part 2, you feel me, where we're gonna go a little bit deeper into Ethan's life, bro. This is what's necessary, community. We got to talk about the things that we experience. I get it. It can hurt some people's feelings. It can make some people mad. It could turn you into a pariah in your own community, right? It really can. But if we don't do it, the cycle repeats itself over and over. We are a repetitive people. We do what we see. You feel me? That's all we do. So if you don't see someone talking or see someone lifting or see someone working, you don't never know you can do it, right? So we need to see these things. So thank you, Ethan. I appreciate you, good brother, man. Salute. Be
Thank
safe.
you very much.
And
I'll
like
I'll leave it with saying,
go ahead.
people to follow me on social media. My username is Ethan Poetic 23 on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Lemonade, Threads. My normal name is Ethan Poetic on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all social media platforms. Again, my website is ethanspeaks.com to book me for serious inquiries for restorative justice in circles, keynote speakings, or buy my book off of me for the hardcover or softcover. Or if you want the ebook or the audio version, it's available on all major platforms from Audible, Amazon, Kobo, Google, you name it, it's on there. Or you can just email me and I'll send you the link.
Absolutely. Ethan, I thank you, bro. I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to grab that book, man. I want to read it. I want to see what all's going on. Because I'm trying to figure out how to write my book, right? So I can understand life and listen, you got to stand next to people that are doing things, right? And if you don't understand what I mean, right? You can't just stand next to the people in your neighborhood. You can't just stand next to the people in your family. You got to go outside of those circles, right? You got to talk to people. This brother's all the way from Lancaster. Hit me up, said, man, I want to come on your podcast. I want to talk about who I am and my effects on my community, right? So salute to him, man. Shout out to him. Keep on going, Ethan. Do not stop, man, because your story of adversity and resiliency, that's a real situation. And I really appreciate you for taking the time to talk to me today, man. It's Uncle P. It's cmpradio.net. You already know it's the station. Listen, I got to get to work. I appreciate you, Ethan. Be safe. Salute.
Okay. The recording stopped.